Hello, anybody who decided to click on this video. This is a video for Europeans, or I guess just non-Americans, or anyone who doesn't understand baseball, but mostly Europeans and people who are coming over from the Sorare Football product to the Sorare MLB product. My name is Alex Hooper. I used to be a baseball journalist, and I am a longtime baseball fan. This is Progressive Field in Cleveland, Ohio, behind me, the home of the Cleveland Guardians, that's my hometown, the team I've supported growing up, and also the team that I covered for a couple of years. And my writing was essentially about baseball statistics, so not necessarily the storylines of the game, but how the inner workings of the game happen. So the good news is I've watched a video or two on comparing baseball to cricket, and I'm going to try to relay that back to you in an American's terms for someone who doesn't really understand cricket, but kind of has an idea. And also there would be some soccer kind of wedged in there. So again, this video is not for Americans mostly, and gives me great joy in saying that because it's funny and I like saying it. So basically, I'm going to just break down the game in terms first of the ways that you can score in MLB Sorare, and then move over to the positional aspects and how you're going to fill out your lineup in Sorare, because this is an insane game. Not necessarily Sorare MLB, but if you play Sorare, you know it's pretty insane in a lot of different ways. But baseball in general is a crazy, silly game with a lot of intricate rules, and so many weird things are going to happen if you watch it. But even if you don't, that's why this video is here, because I'm going to explain how you score. So when you're watching a game, or at least breaking down a box score, or just seeing why you scored points, you'll know why a little bit better. So let's get into it. So here's the scoring matrix for Sorare baseball. Just to outline baseball first. You play 9 innings. So each team bats once for 9 times, unless the home team's winning. They don't need to play their last inning. They don't need to hit the last time if they're leading heading into the bottom of the 9th, or if it's a shortened game, the bottom of whatever inning, or I guess it can't really happen in extra innings. So don't worry about that. But 9 innings, unlike rounders, I got the rounders before I got to cricket. My understanding of rounders is that there's a clock for 10-minute innings and as many people bat as possible. Again, that's my understanding of it. Basically, it's 27 outs on each side. And everything resets and the other team comes up to bat after 3 outs. So the top of the inning is going to be the away team, the team that traveled to the ballpark. It's like the first penalty taker in a penalty shootout. And kind of the same way where like the last penalty shooter doesn't have to take their penalty if there's an insurmountable lead by the end. So, and then, yeah, the bottom half of the inning is going to be the home team. It's always that way. The away team hits first, the home team hits last, and that can create some drama because you can win in your last at bat, and it's very fun. But in cricket, an inning, it's a limited amount of overs, or all but the last batsmen are out. That's my understanding. But in baseball, it's just after 3 outs. And also, I believe there's a different way to interchange batsmen in cricket. In baseball, all 9 players need to hit in the same order every single time. So the first hitter doesn't come up until everyone has hit, and then it turns over. All positions on the field bat except the pitcher, which there's a universal DH now. That's new to baseball, but pitcher doesn't hit. Someone who doesn't play the field hits for them, and that can be used to like get a player rest, or sometimes people are just so bad at playing the field they're just a DH. So that's an inning. That's the roster construction a little bit, but I talked about outs. There need to be 3 outs. Just before I get into this, I'm more so explaining this here, the innings pitched. So the ways to get out are strikeout, which is essentially taking the wicket in cricket, which is fun to say, but you have to do it 3 times. So you're going to get a strike zone on a lot of American broadcasts now. You'll see the strike zone. It's the width of the plate, and from the knees of the hitter, the batsman, to their chest, generally where the letters of their uniform are. And then there's an umpire who makes judgment calls about every one of these pitches, and sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong. But wherever the pitch crosses the front plane of the plate, that is what dictates whether something's a strike or not. So the other ways to record outs: caught outs, just like in cricket; force outs. It's when a runner doesn't reach a base that they must go to in time. It's essentially like a run out when the wicket's taken out, when players are in between the crease. A tag out, it's where someone doesn't need to advance to a base, and I should explain that a little bit, but basically when you're tagged with the ball. So if there's a runner on second base and a batsman puts the ball into play, they don't have to advance to third. But if they're on first, because the batsman has to go to first, that means the batsman, or the runner rather, on first must advance to second. So that would be a force out. Whereas if the runner leaves second when they don't have to, they must be tagged with the ball, and generally in the glove. So yeah, so that's outs. That's all of them explained. There are other ways you can actually, runners who are hit with the ball in fair play are actually out, but that almost never happens, but you'll see that down the line. So runs are just like cricket, where you're going back and forth, except you have to go all the way around 4 bases. You have to advance legally from first to second to third, and then back home. Where the batsman is, home base is essentially the opposite crease. Like you have to reach all the way to the other side by hitting first, second, and third legally. You can't advance unless the ball's touched the ground, or a fielder. If you advance a base before a ball is caught in the air, you have to return to the base and then you can move up. That's called a tag out, or a tag up rather. I already talked about tag outs. Tag up is when the ball is caught in the air, a runner is on the base and moves up to the other base after the ball is caught. But if they leave the base early and the ball is thrown, that's a force out if it's thrown to the base. So that's legal advancement. So that starts me here with runs. Anyone who scores, that's a run. They have to score before the inning is over. So if a ball is hit on the ground and there's a force out at first base, but the runner on third crossed the plate, it's not a run because the inning technically was over when the person was put out at first and that runner didn't legally advance. You don't have to worry about that. It's just something you'll see. But generally, anytime someone scores legally, that's a run. So that brings me over to innings pitched. We talked about innings. Innings pitched is the outs recorded by a pitcher divided by 3. So if they get through 7 innings, they start the 8th inning and they only get 1 out before leaving the game. That's 7 1/3 innings is how you'll heard it referred to. It's not math where 12 batters came up in the 8th inning. They faced 4 of them. So that was a third of the inning. A third of an inning statistically in baseball is only every out recorded. So you hear 7 1/3, 7 2/3, or 8. That's the only way that it's really recorded. Really quick, I wanted to talk about how to get these. I'll break this down in a statistical video later, but just the best ways to get runs are hitters at the top of the lineup. So hitters who bat 1, 2, 3, 4 in a batting order consistently. Generally, the best hitters generally have the best hitters behind them. And if you get a good team who scores a lot of runs, naturally those guys are going to score more runs. Also fast players, which I'll talk about a little bit later. Innings pitched are going to be racked up by starting pitchers, which is one designated spot in your roster, which we'll talk about in a second. Relief pitchers will generally only get 1 innings pitched if they finish an inning. Sometimes they don't, and you're going to be in bad shape anyway if that happens. But if you're looking for innings pitched, it's going to be your starter, and some starters generally pitch deeper into games, record more outs than others pretty consistently. All right, moving on. We're going to drop down to strikeouts. I talked about it a little bit before. Think of it as taking the wicket. That would be like a called strike, or, you know, if a batter swings and misses, a batsman swings and misses and you take out the wicket, then that's an out. A strike can happen by a batsman watching the ball cross through that strike zone I talked about, chest to knees, width of the plate. And it can be on the corners. That's generally what you're trying to do as a pitcher. They can swing or miss at a pitch, and that's a strike, or they can foul the ball off, and that's a strike. But to get a strikeout, you need a third strike, and a foul ball can't be strike 3. So say a batsman is at the plate, they hit a foul ball, which I'll go to this really quick and show you. A foul ball is anything to the left. Let's see. I'm not even showing you yet. Yeah. Okay, we're here. Anything to the left of this foul line, anything to the right of this foul line, you see the little white spots up and down here. And then you can see behind me in my picture that's screen sharing. So you see the white lines I'm talking about. These foul poles here also dictate foul territory. So anything over here is foul. Anything over here is foul, especially up in this awesome bar. This is the best place you can watch a game, and they're the cheapest tickets if you go to a baseball game. But check that out. So, okay, we'll go back to the screen share. But anything back here, that's going to be a foul ball. But can't be the third strike. That has to be a swinging strike or a watched or a called third strike is what a batsman watching that pitch happen is called. You might see it every now and then. If a third strike is dropped by the catcher, the batter can try to advance to first base. That's not going to affect your scoring. It's still a strikeout for your pitcher. It's still a strikeout for your hitter, even if they reach base on a dropped third strike. So don't be confused by that if it happens. And then obviously it's -1 for the hitter when that happens, speaking of which. All right. So for strikeouts for both sides, you can find pitchers who are good at this by looking at their K percentage. K in baseball stands for a strikeout. You can find that at fangraphs.com or baseballreference.com. Again, I'll do a statistics video and break these sorts of things down in depth a little bit later, but you want a high K percentage for pitchers, and then you want a lower K percentage for hitters because they're negative points, obviously. Players who hit home runs, which I'll talk about here in a second, generally have high K percentages. It's not going to matter over time if you find someone. Prioritize the home runs over the K percentage. So, all right, moving on from strikeouts, let's talk about these hits. So a single, double, triple, or home run, they're all considered base hits. A base hit's when the ball touches the ground or goes over the fence in fair territory without being caught by a fielder, and there's no force or tag out. So a single would be someone hits the ball, it goes through the infield on the ground, they reach first base before someone can get the ball to first base. If there is a runner on first base and the player hits it through the infield and the outfielder throws it to second, and the runner going to second is out, that's a fielder's choice. It counts as an out. You don't get a hit. So anytime there's not an out recorded by force out or a caught ball, again, like in cricket, that's generally going to be a base hit. A single is when you get one base. Double is when you get 2, triple is 3, home run is when you come all the way around the score, also when the ball goes over the fence in fair territory, kind of like in cricket. So really quick, you want to prioritize home runs for hitters. Just as a thought experiment, a home run, you get 10 points for the home run. You get 3 points because you knocked in a run. I'll talk about RBIs in a second if I didn't already. I didn't. A run batted in is any run that happens because of the actions of a hitter. So if there's a runner on third base and the hitter hits a single, is save at first, and that runner scores, that's an RBI for the hitter, and it's a run for the runner. So a home run, you get a home run, so that's 10 points. You get an RBI because you knocked yourself in. It was because of your action. That's 13 points, and you get a run because you scored. So that's 16 points. So where that's going to matter is if there's runners on base. Say the bases are loaded. There are runners on all 3 bases, and a batter hits a home run. It's called a grand slam. It's 4 runs. You get the home run. You get 4 RBIs. So now you're talking 22 points, and you get a run. That's 25 points in one action. 25-point games rarely happen based on what I'm seeing on Sorare data. So like one grand slam could set you up for an entire week. Also, if you stack your lineup and you have all 3 runners that are on base, you are then going to get the extra 9 runs from them, or the extra 9 points rather, via runs from them. So home runs, big deal. Look for them a lot. Let's see, moving on. The one thing about hits, another thing about hits, sometimes you will think you got a hit, but the play is ruled an error by a fielder. So like if the ball is hit high and deep into the outfielder, or into the outfield, and the outfielder drops the ball, sometimes the official scorer will rule it an error. You're not going to get points. It's going to count as an out for your hitter, and any run that scores as a result of that error will not be an RBI. So this is just a judgment call, and it's going to frustrate you a lot, but there are no ways to know really if something is just an error. It just kind of happens. So really quick, earned runs. I didn't touch on this. This is a complicated one. It's any runs that are scored by the opposing offense, but not the result of an error. And so if the bases are loaded, again, just to use that example, and a batsman hits it to the right fielder who drops the ball and all 3 runs scored, none of those runs are charged as earned runs to the pitcher. So you won't lose points if there is an error made by a defensive player. The other way you can avoid earned runs, not avoid, but you'll be shocked to see that you don't get earned runs or do, is if your pitcher starts the inning, allows a runner on base, and then leaves the game, and then the next pitcher comes in and gives up, say, a 2-run home run in that situation, the new pitcher is only responsible for the earned runs that he allowed. So the hitter in that case, whereas the guy in first, that earned run will be charged back to the pitcher who left the game. So you can get earned runs even after a pitcher leaves the game. Again, not going to affect how you look for players or how you build your lineup. It's just a thing that you'll notice within the game where you might think like, oh, my pitcher did well, and then all of a sudden they didn't do so well after they leave the game. Let's get the walks really quick. No real correlation with cricket or anything like that, but it's when 4 non-strikes are thrown in an at-bat. So if a batter does not get out and they watch 4 balls, any 4 pitches that are not within that strike zone or swung at and missed, that's a walk. And they just get first base for free. And if there's a runner at first, they move up to second. If there's 2 runners on, they all move up, etc. But that's going to be negative points for your pitcher. That's going to be positive points for your hitter. You can find players who rack up a lot of walks. They will differentiate themselves from other players by having a high on-base percentage. This is hits plus walks, essentially, divided by plate appearances. And a walk is just as good as a single in most cases, especially in fantasy sports. Other than that, it doesn't give you the opportunity for RBIs unless the bases are loaded. If you followed all that, you're listening well, and you probably can tune out now. Because you're doing a good job. Hit by pitch is the same thing. It's basically a walk. Unlike a leg before wicket in cricket, it is not an out. The batter actually gets first base for free like a walk. Unless they're outside of the batter's box, which that's like getting hit and is a leg before wicket, essentially, where they would be out. Also, an umpire can call a hit batsman a strike if they intentionally lean into the ball, but that rarely happens. But yeah, basically a walk, bad for your pitcher, good for your hitter. A stolen base. Have I covered everything else? Yes, this is the last hitter category, and then I'll get into these confusing pitcher categories, and then we'll look at the rosters really quick, and I'll explain that. But stolen bases, 5 points, pretty good. It's backing up, if you're familiar with the term, I believe it's illegal in cricket, but any advancement of a runner that is kind of on their own choosing on a pitch, or not the result of a batted ball. So a stolen base would not be a tag up. That's not a steal, because it's a result of the ball being put into play and then they move up, not a steal. A stolen base would be most oftentimes the pitcher has the ball. I actually can't think of a time when it's not this. And I've watched a lot of baseball. So the pitcher will have the ball about to deliver a pitch. They start their motion. As soon as they start their motion, the runner on first, it's generally a first to second transaction. The runner will take off and head towards second. The catcher has to catch the pitch and throw it to second, and they have to tag the batter or the runner because it's not a force out. He's advancing on his own volition. He doesn't have to. If he's safe, that's a stolen base. And it can happen second to third. It can happen third to home, but it's less likely the closer you get to home. So that's a stolen base. Fast players are the ones who do this. Very, very rarely are you going to see it from slow players. But stolen bases along with home runs are what you want to focus on for hitters. If there are players who hit home runs and steal bases, both at a high rate, they are going to be the players who go for the most money. There's an inefficiency in those players. They're at a pretty big premium. Very few players do both very well. So that's what you're going to look for in your hitters, but you're also going to have to pay up for them. But anytime you can really like cherry pick steals, or anytime there's a guy you can find that steals a lot of bases and can have a big power game and just occasionally hit a home run, these are the kind of guys that you can target, especially some of the cheap ones. There are some players who you can just find who just steal bases and don't do a lot else, who will bury you a lot of times. But when you find them, it's really good. Okay. Let's move on to these confusing pitcher decisions. So a win for a pitcher goes to the pitcher who was pitching before the team took the lead that ultimately won them the game. So if the pitcher pitches 6 innings, they took the lead in the third, and they never give up that lead, he gets the win. He has to pitch at least 5 innings if he started the game. Again, confusing. The other way it can happen is if the team was losing, the starting pitcher left, your relief pitcher came into the game, he pitches his inning, and the bottom of that inning, his team takes the lead, and they never give it up. So even if they're losing when he came into the game, he held the score where it was, and the offense came back, and that lead was never relinquished. That's a win. You can't really hunt these. They're very random. It's kind of a silly statistic. It doesn't mean anyone is good or bad. It means the team was good overall. Generally, you're going to get wins from good pitchers on good teams. But ultimately it's a matter of the team. So even if a not so good pitcher is pitching against a really bad team, they have a better shot at a win than, a mediocre pitcher on a bad team against a good team. Like if they're not going to win the game, if the team is less likely to win the game, you're obviously less likely to get a win. So I wouldn't hunt these. They're just, they're a nice little benefit if you can find them. All right, so saves and holds is essentially the version of a win if you enter the game already with a lead. So a save happens generally. There are a lot of weird ways you can get saves. Again, it's a role-based thing. Closers generally get saves. You'll hear guys referred to as closers, and you can find online, you can find bullpen charts. Bullpens are your relieving pitchers, basically like your bench in soccer. They're used primarily for relieving, but generally one guy is designated the closer. That's not always the case. Some teams like the Tampa Bay Rays, they don't use a closer specifically. They don't designate anyone. They just use whoever's available in higher leverage spots. So generally what happens is you have to pitch 3 outs that end the game, and you can't have entered the game when your team is leading by more than 3 runs. So a pitcher who comes in with a lead of 1, 2, or 3, pitches at least 3 innings and finishes the game. That's a save. And a hold is basically a save that doesn't end the game. So a pitcher who comes into the game while you're leading by 3 or less and then leaves the game without having given up the lead is a hold. The reason that differential is big is because you'll see a lot of closers probably. Again, if you play Sorare Football, it's going to be a lot like goalkeepers, where there's a very short supply of guys who rack up saves. Those are going to be your closers. There can only be so many. But holds being 5 points as opposed to 10 means you can find players often referred to as high leverage relievers or setup men, or less often firemen. they can be called, who come into games in high leverage spots, generally trying to protect a lead. The main guy for both of these are Josh Hader and Devin Williams of the Milwaukee Brewers. Josh Hader, point per batter faced, I calculated, is by far the best relief pitcher in the game. He's going to go for a lot of money. But the guy who comes in before him, Devin Williams, is not a closer, maybe overlooked, and scores better than all but 6 closers. So what you're going to look for in pitchers in general is strikeouts. And also guys who don't give up hits and runs, obviously. But the inefficiency is going to be in strikeout rate. And then there's going to be a premium on save and holds. So if you can find non-closers who rack up holds and also get a lot of strikeouts, kind of like Devin Williams, there's going to be a premium on those. So, all right. So that's the scoring matrix. Let's look really quickly at your team building. All right. So starting pitcher. Pitcher starts the game. A relief pitcher, a corner infielder, a middle infielder, an outfielder, 1 extra hitter. So any of these 3 or 1 flex can be any of them. So let's look at the positions really quick. So you got your corner infielder, your third baseman, your first baseman. These are generally going to be home run hitters. Not a lot of steals to be had here. But if you want power, you're going to find it generally in your corner infielder guys. There's going to be a lot more power in those positions than in the rest of the game. The middle infielder is going to be your shortstop, your second base, and your catcher. These are generally defensive first guys, and you don't get defense points at this point in MLB Sorare. So there is going to be a premium on middle infielders, generally shortstops who hit a lot of home runs, hit for power. There's 3, 4, 5, maybe shortstops in Major League Baseball who hit for a lot of power, and some of them run really well too. Fernando Tatis Jr., who has not played a game all year, so his price may be low for collectors, but if you can get Fernando Tatis Jr. for a low price, he's one of those guys. But generally these positions are not going to hit for a lot of power, not going to hit very well in general. And catchers too, they rotate a lot every third day, generally the backup plays, because it's a physically grueling position. Generally they're not going to play on getaway days, which is going to be Wednesday or Thursday or Sunday. Generally teams travel to their next destination on that day, and you're playing 162 games. You play a game and then you get on a plane and go. So the catchers won't play. So at this point, I'd say stay away from catchers unless, you know, your best option Ethereum wise, investment wise, as a catcher hits better than what your price point is at the rest of your middle infield. So that, again, that's middle infield. Then you got your outfield. It's all these positions. These can be power guys. These can be speed guys. These can be defensive guys. This can be just a mishmash, but generally you're going to find some value there. So yeah, that's the, and then there's the starting pitchers and relief pitchers, just someone who starts and someone who doesn't. I think that's it. And then you just have your flex spots. So that kind of explains what you're going to be looking for and the stats therein. I tried to do my best. I tried to compare it to cricket as much as possible, just to help you know what you're watching, know what you're looking for. I'm going to do a statistics video here very soon. Statistics are huge in baseball. I'll help you find what you're looking for at each position and what stats you can lean on that are predictive as opposed to what has already happened. In baseball, you're going to see a lot of people chase stats that have already happened. If a player hits a home run, it has no bearing on whether they'll hit a home run ever again in their life. There are stats that say whether or not they might relative to other players, and those stats are generally not well known by people. So there's going to be an edge in some of these stats and some of the things that you need to look for. You're going to find them on baseballsavant.com. That's just a little tease. So if you want to get ahead of the game, go to baseballsavant.com, learn those stats, and I'll be back to explain them very shortly. But if you have any questions, please ask them in the comments or follow me on Twitter at Lex Hooper. That's at LEXHOOPER. I love talking about this stuff. I'm going to be dropping more and more stats as the years goes on, and I think you're going to be able to find an edge by following me. Not just trying to do a cheap plug. I think it's actually true. I feel like I might have an extra edge in this game, especially because I am not a whale. I'm not going to have a lot of Ethereum to spend, so I'm going to have to do it with cheap guys who fly under the radar, and then build up my Ethereum by trading them around. So we're going to do that. We're going to go on that journey together. So if you're a European or in some other part of the country that doesn't know baseball, I hope this was helpful. And follow me and DM me and ask questions along the way. I'm more than willing to help. I'm ready to have a fun time with this. So if you could like and subscribe to FSI for the rest of my content, it'll be there. It'll also be on my Twitter every time it goes up. So do that. Again, ask me questions if you can. And until the next time, I'll talk to you.